Hey everyone, Margarita here. I want to talk in this video about the near fatal crash that my younger son and I barely missed on Christmas Eve while we were heading to Detroit to go to a midnight mass. He has never been to a midnight mass, and I found a church in Detroit that's been there for almost 200 years. So that's where we were going when all of this happened. Um, so when all this happened, it was probably about 11:45 to 11:50 at night. And leading up to that, I was getting ready when we got in the car to leave. As soon as I started the car, the very first thing I heard, the song that came on at the very beginning, and also I don't have playlists, so these are just random songs that pick themselves and play themselves. So as soon as I started the car, it was an Eminem song, and it's called Still Don't Give a Fuck. So at the very beginning of the song, it starts off with, a lot of people ask me, am I afraid of death? And he says, hell yeah, I'm afraid of death. I don't want to die yet. And this is not the first time that I've gotten in my vehicle and that song came on, was the very first thing that was said when I got in the vehicle and started it. This also happened to me in January of this year. So this was my first clue that something was going to go wrong, something was going to happen. And I kind of ignored it. Wasn't really thinking about it until after it all happened, I realized why the song came on. And so let's go back to earlier this year in January when the little boy exploded in the hyperbaric explosion in Troy, Michigan. Someone had just messaged me, sent me the link to the news clip of what was going on while it was happening. And they asked me, isn't this the center you guys treat at? And I said, yeah. And I clicked on it and I watched it and I had to go somewhere. I was getting ready to meet someone somewhere. And so I had to go. And as soon as I got in the vehicle, that's exactly what happened that day as well. And really, what was happening is we were playing Russian roulette, treating at this center, but we didn't have any other choice. There was no other way for us to treat our injuries because we're pretty much blackballed from the traditional medical system due to my mother's ongoing crimes and her involvement working in the hospital systems for 45 years. And that was the only way for us to receive treatment. And we had been treating there for 6 years when this happened. So without the treatment, we were near death for several years. Without the treatment, we wouldn't have survived. And I ended up spending close to $200,000 out of pocket in the end over a 6-year period. And my insurance company was billed over $1 million, and they spent several $100,000 as well on the treatments. But that was the only place where we could receive hyperbaric oxygen treatment, and that's what we needed. Everybody knows that that's the reversal for carbon monoxide poisoning. And because of my mother's crimes and the crimes of Beaumont Hospital, we were not going to receive treatment at any point. And it was getting down to we weren't going to live if I didn't find a place to treat us soon. And it went on in an extreme manner for 14 months before beginning treatment. So that's how we ended up at the center. So I have a whole playlist on videos regarding our injuries and what all happened, how the injury became so extreme, what all happened to get us to that point. So you can look at those. They're already up on my channel. But the whole time we were treating there, basically we're over here playing Russian roulette because that could have been one of us in the chamber. And now it's all come out about what caused it and everything. And it wasn't maintained properly, hadn't really been maintained, I think, since the end of 2021, once their doctor left. And we were still treating there. However, at some point we shifted and we were treating at their other center in Brighton, Michigan, where things were being maintained properly and the staff was following the guidelines and everything. So even though we weren't at that center directly at that point, we had done the majority of our treatments there and in that specific chamber. So the whole time we were treating, here we were playing Russian roulette with this place, but it didn't really matter because we weren't going to survive our injuries anyway. And I know that. I know exactly where I stand, exactly where I was the day we began treatment. I knew every step of the way where I was at. I was left in an extreme state of suffocation and brain swelling. for about 3 years straight. And it had been 14 months continuous all that time with no relief before we found that center. So the last time that song came on in the car when I started it was the day that that all happened to the little boy earlier this year, which I believe was January 30th, 2025. So I just thought it was very ironic that someone sent me the clip in the news and I watched it. I get in my vehicle and that is what played immediately. So then all this time goes by because now it's been almost a year. And this happens again. We get in the car to go to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. And the same exact thing happens where those lyrics are playing on the radio. And then, we don't really say anything about it. He heard it, I heard it. And then I mentioned something about how that happened previously with the other incident, and that was the song that played. So I was driving for about, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes maybe, and we were heading toward Detroit. And if you're from Michigan, then you would know that going that way from where I live, going north, you have to go up the Rouge Bridge and down the other side. It's very high up. I don't know how many feet exactly it is, but it would be really dangerous to get in a car accident up at the top of that bridge or anywhere on that bridge. And that's where we were heading. So we start driving, and I'm coming through the end of the previous city leading into Detroit. And I was in the middle lane. There was a car in front of me. And there was a SUV that was driving recklessly, and they were in the far right lane. So I seen the headlights in my rearview mirror initially, and I could tell the vehicle was driving recklessly. They were weaving in and out of traffic. They were getting really close to other vehicles and just still weaving in and out of traffic. They get in the right lane. They go past me and the car in front of me. And they nearly hit both of us and sideswiped both of us from the right lane into our middle lane. And they eventually sped up because they were going really fast. They sped up a little faster past the car in front of me and were still weaving in and out of traffic, past where we were at. So after that happened, I got over to the far left and went around the car that was in front of me. And I stayed to the far left because I could see this vehicle driving so recklessly. They're just from one extreme to the next, going all the way from the right, all the way to the left, getting up on whatever car's in front of it. They're getting really close to the tail end of those cars, and they're forcing their way in between different vehicles. Now, at this time of night, there really wasn't many cars on the road, but I'd say there was probably about 10 in this mile stretch at that time. And I see this vehicle just going faster, driving more recklessly. I don't know what kind of vehicle it was. It was a white SUV, but I don't remember seeing a type of vehicle, and it looked like something I had never really seen too many of, and I'm usually pretty good about that. So I don't know what kind of vehicle it was exactly, but I was still in the far left lane, and I was probably doing about 75, and we're climbing to the top of the Rouge Bridge as this is going on. And not far in front of me, there is another vehicle, and it seemed like it was either a minivan or a Pacifica, maybe something like that. And there's another car in the middle lane at the same time. And this vehicle that's driving recklessly gets really close to the vehicle in the middle lane, and the person in the middle lane tapped their brakes. And as soon as that happened, the vehicle driving recklessly forced its way into the left lane where the vehicle in front of me was. And it caused a very severe collision. They all crashed into each other. And at this point, it was as if time had slowed down, as if everything was in slow motion. And it seemed like what was about probably 2 or 3 seconds was about 20 seconds. And I already had said something before that vehicle got up that far. I said it out loud, And I said, I don't know what's wrong with people, but they don't know how to drive today. And that's what made me get into the far left lane. But when this all happened, all three vehicles lifted up off the ground. So there was two in the fast lane. There was one in front of the one that the majority of the vehicle that took the impact. So there was three vehicles. Then there's the one that tapped on its brakes. And then I believe the one that was in front of the one that was in front of me ended up either barely getting hit or didn't get hit at all and just kept going. But the one who caused the accident tried to force its way in between the one that was in front of me and the one that was in front of it, trying to get around the one that tapped its brakes. So they all lifted up off the ground, and I was just far enough back to start slowing down. For a split second, I thought the vehicle that was driving recklessly that caused all of this, I thought he was going to spin towards us and hit us. And he happened to hit at just the right spot where he spun all the way to the opposite side of the freeway and ended up against the wall. But the car parts flew everywhere. Smoke was everywhere. These vehicles lifted off the ground. The one that caused the accident was definitely doing at least 80 or 90 maybe. And the vehicle that got pinned against the wall that was in front of me got completely smashed. And the passenger, in the front passenger, I had seen somebody hop out. I believe there's probably a child in the back because that person hopped out really fast and ripped open the door behind it. But I had slowed down to such an extreme degree that I barely stopped before I ended up in the pile of the wreck as well. And by this time, the vehicle that caused the accident was way over on the other side of the road. And at this point, all the vehicles are smoking. There's car parts all over the entire freeway. We were at the top of the Rouge Bridge, which is, I don't know, probably at least a 50 to 100-foot drop, I'm thinking. I don't really know how high up it is, but it's pretty high. And it's not a safe place to be in a car accident. So as soon as I seen it about to happen, because I saw everything about to happen in slow motion, I seen exactly what this guy was doing. I had an extreme sense of like dread kind of come upon me as this vehicle was approaching behind me, and as he was driving recklessly when he almost sideswiped us and the car in front of us initially. And it was like an impending doom was looming around me, and I could feel it, but I wasn't really sure why. And we were able to kind of like move out of the way and go in the middle and kind of pass through it. But had I done one thing differently, if I had made one move differently than what I did, most likely we would have been in the wreck with them. And the car behind me, I think the car behind me was the vehicle that was in front of me initially when I got over. I think they seen what was kind of going on, and they got behind me as well initially. And they were able to slow down just as quick as I was. And all the vehicles that were behind us were all able to slow down in time so no other vehicles ended up in the pile. But the wreckage had spread like all across the entire, all four lanes of the freeway from one side to the other. So we passed through Detroit, and as I'm passing down on the other side of the bridge, when I was trying to ask my son if he's seen all of this, and because I was screaming as it was happening, because I knew it was going to happen. I knew as soon as I saw him trying to force his way into the other lane when there was nowhere for him to get in the other lane, I knew what was going to happen. And he said he only saw the vehicle that was in front of me that was pinned up against, between the vehicle that caused the accident initially before it spun out and the wall. He said he saw that vehicle. But he then said that he was listening to a Billie Eilish song, and then he pulled out the headphones and he played it on the regular phone after this all happened. And he said the song was telling him, it started saying, "You're alive, you're alive, you're alive." And it was going faster and faster as this accident was happening. So it wasn't until yesterday that I actually pulled out, so it was like in the morning, I pulled out the phone and started Googling the lyrics to the song because I'd never heard the song. So I Googled it. And what that song actually says, because this plays a significant role. So this song says, what if this all happened to you on a different day, on a bridge where there wasn't a rail in the way? So like in this case, if there wasn't a rail, no, those vehicles would all flew off the edges. And if one wrong move would have been made, it would have been us as well. And then it says, what if you weren't alone? There were kids in the car. What if you were remote? No one knows where you are. If you changed anything, would you not have survived? You're alive, you're alive, you're alive. And that's what was playing as this was going on in his headphones. After the song by Eminem that started all this off when we left. So, like where I am today with everything, we have nearly escaped death so many times. Me alone, it's been at least 100 times. Some of these, I'd say at least 5 to 10 of them, were very, very, very close calls. And 2 of the times I did die and come back. So with my son, the same thing. He's been through quite a few of them, even though he's like not even 10 yet. And it wasn't until I became pregnant with him that everything started to amplify with how this was all happening to me throughout the course of my life. Once I became pregnant with him, this all amplified significantly from that point forward. And it wasn't until my brain swelled and I died and came back the first time, it wasn't until about a year, it was over a year after that, that I realized that there is a huge calling on my life, and it's probably pertaining to my youngest son as well. Because everything that we've been through and everything that's happened to us, it's going to change the world. It's going to change the outcome of humanity, and it's going to change the world. And I've known this since then. So I think that that's why we have all of these near-death experiences, all these very close calls, everything that we've went through. And we can back this up to last week, because about a week ago, about a week prior to this, he had asked me about taxes and what happens when you get older and how you pay taxes when you get older or something, or when you don't work anymore. I don't even know how his mind got that far down the line into like working and life and all that. I don't even know how his brain even fast forwarded that far down the line. Um, but I did break it down and I explained it all to him. And I then explained that, well, there's different types of taxes. There's property taxes, there's sales tax, there's income taxes, there's different taxes. So I broke it all down, and then I went even further into detail because his name is on my house with me. He's the other owner. He owns the other half. And if should something happen to me, he then gets the entire home. So I took it even further and I told him how all of it works, what has to happen should something happen to me, and the steps he would need to take. And then I was also explaining about how people that have regular paychecks, that's where some of that money comes from once you're old down the line. But I don't receive paychecks. So I told him, when somebody that actually gets a paycheck comes by, I'll show you. And a few days went by, and then my daughter came over and she had her paycheck. So I showed it to him, and I showed him how it all worked, and like where the money comes from and the different places that that money goes to. Then on my birthday, which was 2 days before Christmas Eve, my daughter comes over again. And then I started telling her basically everything I had said to my son. Because it's very specific instructions. It's not very complicated. Everything is allocated out individually. And technically, my life insurance would pay off what would be finished being owed on the house. So because he's so young, I then went over all of this with her because she's 20. So I went over everything with her. And initially, when my brain was swelling in 2018 and I was in my bed and I knew I was going to die, and she was in my room with my baby, he was a baby at the time, and I said goodbye to them, I was trying to spit out what I said to the two of them, what I said to my son last week and what I said to my daughter the other day, I was trying to spit this out of my mouth because nothing was written out on paper. Nothing was like properly allocated in any which direction. And the people that would have been left, they would have ended up losing the house because nobody knows how to do what I do. So when this all happened to me in 2018, I tried to spit out these instructions, but she was only 12, I think. She had no clue what I was even saying. And at this moment, my brain was swelling in an extreme manner, and it probably wasn't coming out properly. And she didn't even understand some of what I was saying. So at this point, I thought I should kind of go over all of this with her in that moment, which I did. And then she was like, "Why are you telling me all of this?" And I just said, "Well, because I just went over all of this with your little brother, and he's not really old enough to fully comprehend what I said. He probably soaked in maybe 10% of what I said. But you would be the better candidate to understand how all of this works." So I went over all of it with her. And I said, "Well, since his name's on the house with me, what if something happens to the both of us at the same time? Then that would leave you and my older son would then be left whatever's left." And I said, it's not that uncommon for entire families to die in car accidents. And that's why I'm kind of going over all this with you, because like, look what already has happened to me. Look how many times I've died and came back. Look how many close calls there's been. And I had just gone over everything with her literally like 2 days prior to this. And she just seemed kind of baffled that I was just going into that great of a degree of these instructions and what to do. And it was just really odd that this all happened to us just after I explained what you should do should both of us not be here anymore. But even if it was just me gone, she would still have to kind of guide my younger son on what to do in those steps as well. So I went over all of that with her just prior to this. And I just think it's really strange that all of these circumstances keep happening. And at the root of all this, I had about, I want to say it was 25 really shitty birthdays in a row. This year that did not happen. It was just more like a normal day. But there were certain things that were kind of happening around my birthday, just prior to, the early morning of, and then just after, which just after would be this incident where we nearly avoided this car wreck. And at the root of all this, I'm pretty sure I figured out the problem, because all these years I really just didn't understand why this was happening to me every year. But the more I figured out along the way, over the course of basically since my injury and everything that my mother's been doing every step of the way from the time I was a small child to the current day, she's very resentful at the fact that I was born. And I believe she swirls dark thoughts about me on my birthday every year, which is why I had such strange negative circumstances happen every year on my birthday for 25 years. Because that's just not normal. It wasn't just a regular bad day. It's usually the worst day out of the entire year for me, most of the time, most of those 25 years. So this year it didn't happen, but the clues and the signs were there that this energy was still being sent my way. It just kind of skated around the day of my birthday. It kind of happened just before and just after. So that kind of tells me a little bit further about what my mother's been doing, the dark thoughts that she swirls. And then at the same time, her and her criminal group, they're grasping for straws because if I'm not taken out, basically they're all going to be spending the rest of their life in prison. So of course she's swirling dark thoughts on my birthday. She always was. So that is kind of what's been going on. And what nobody realizes is that I have a very big calling on my life. And this includes my youngest child. He's involved in all this. A lot of the information that I have to deliver to the rest of the world is because he was born. Some of the circumstances surrounding his birth, the pregnancy, the labor, delivery, our injuries, and everything we've been through. The reason I have a lot of this information is due to him. So I believe it's both of us. We're both earth angels. We're one of the 144,000 chosen ones, and we do have a very big calling on our life, each one of us individually and together. And I do believe that that's why we endure like very extreme circumstances, and then somehow we manage to barely come out on top or barely make it out of each situation. Maybe not on top, but we barely make it out of each situation. And this has been going on since I was pregnant with him. So I think that that's what's at the root of it. I think I have a very extreme degree of protection due to what I came here to do. And once I died and came back in 2018, when I was in my bed after the brain swelling episode, well, prior to, I guess you could say, leading up to those moments, I remember making a deal with God to keep my physical body here for him. And when I came back to 4 hours later, I didn't realize right away because I was in such an extreme physical state. It took me about a year before I started piecing this together. I realized that I made a deal to keep my physical body here, and it's to expose all of these corrupt criminals who've been participating in some very serious crimes against me and other people. And that I'm also here to change the world with the knowledge that I have, with everything we went to just regarding those circumstances. And then all prior to that, I already had a very extreme degree of life experience, which also gave me more insight and knowledge into things that the rest of the population doesn't know about. So what I'm supposed to do is share that knowledge with the world. And the calling on our lives are so high, it's so high that's why all these things keep happening to us, and why we barely make it out alive, and why we're almost kept in a protective bubble as we move through our lives. And it doesn't matter. All these people can wish all the ill intent they want on us. They can do all the black magic they want on us. And what's going to happen is it's going to shoot right back at them, because our protection level is so high because of everything we've went through and how great the calling is on our lives, that we are extremely protected, and it's just not going to work. So all these people who are doing all this to us, I know I haven't gotten too great into detail regarding this, but I will in the future. I just need to get some of these other videos out first, but I will go into further detail on all of this and how I even figured all this out. Because initially I did not realize that that's what was going on until about 5 years ago. So that is what's going on. I'm 100% sure. I don't care how Catholic she claims to be. I don't care how great of a person all these people out here seem to think she is, or how great of a person all her family members believe she is. It's just not real. That's not who she is. And I will be exposing every step of the way and everything that's gone on. It's just going to take me a lot of videos. But I will get there. I will expose it all. I know for sure there was some dark thoughts swirled about me at this time frame. And if it wasn't just dark thoughts, it was definitely black magic as well. So they're just not realizing, because I do believe there's others helping her, they're just not realizing the degree of protection that I have and what's actually going on in the bigger picture of why I'm still here after everything I've been through, and what I'm supposed to be doing. And like the calling is so great that like other people can't interfere with what my mission is and what I'm here to do, because at the top it's God who calls the shots, and that's why I'm still here to carry out the mission that I promised to complete, and why I keep dying and coming back or narrowly avoiding death. That's the reason for it. So even though all these people have been causing all these problems, attempting to take me out with my mother at the root, none of them are comprehending why I have such an extreme degree of protection, and why they're not able to take me out, and why I'm able to just kind of skate around each set of circumstances. So they can't like override God's plan for the planet, basically. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, and I'll be back with another one. Thanks.